Hello and welcome back to the channel. We continue our tour of Portugal, first visiting Chaves, a city with Roman passes on the banks of the River Támega. And after a quick visit to Montalegre, we move to Lindoso, small in size, but containing a curious surprise. And if you like our video, do not forget to like it, subscribe and activate notifications so that you know when we upload a new video. Chaves, which has about 40,000 inhabitants, was known in Roman times as Aquae Flavii, known within the Roman Empire, both for its thermal waters, as well as the convergence in the place of several Roman routes. As for parking, you will have no problem. We parked in the so-called Parking das Termas, to walk in a pleasant walk the river, and get to the historic center that is a short distance. The parking is just next to the River Támega, and we started our visit to Chaves by a pleasant walk along the river bank. We passed through the so-called Alameda Trajano, and we observed the river, which has a high level of water due to the rains. During the walk, we find a series of stones, strategically placed crossing the river from shore to shore. They are called poldras, placed across the River Támega before the construction of the bridges, to one of which, the Roman Bridge of Trajan, we arrived in a short time. This bridge, now pedestrian, was completed in the time of Emperor Trajan, and has a length of 150 meters supported by 12 granite arches, and in the center of the course of the same, we can find two columns of Roman origin. Before entering the historic center, we cross the River Támega to explore the other bank, where is the neighborhood of the Magdalena, a small neighborhood, where in addition to gentlemen's houses with beautiful facades, we find the Church of San Juan de Dios, a church built in the 18th century, annexed to the former Royal Military Hospital. We return to the opposite shore to visit the Roman Thermas, which can be visited free of charge. This thermal complex is considered one of the largest Roman medicinal resorts on the Iberian Peninsula. The thermal complex dates back to the 1st century AD. It underwent a process of remodeling in the 3rd century, and entered decay from the 4th century, due to a powerful earthquake, until the abandonment and disappearance underground. It was rediscovered in 2006, and some fountains are still active, which allows for greater knowledge of how this type of Roman complex worked. From the Roman thermal rooms, and as is our custom, and we get lost by the streets of Chaves, surrounded by some of them by houses of spectacular colors, and so we arrive at the large square of Camoes, where in addition to the great medieval church of Santa Maria Maior, built on a former Romanesque temple, we find the old palace of the Dukes of Braganza, now reconverted into a museum and tourist office, and a beautiful palace that houses the municipal chamber. We continue our tour by the back of the town hall, where we find small but precious corners, which invite to be shaped in photo or video. Near the square of Camoes, we find the castle, surrounded by a beautiful garden within the walled enclosure. This castle, from which only the tower of the tribute and some of the walls surrounding it are preserved, was built in the 14th century, and inside it you will find a small military museum that you can visit for a price of €1. in addition to having a panoramic view of Chaves from the top of the tower. On our tour of Chaves, we arrive at Praça General Silveira, a large square recently renovated and surrounded by emblematic buildings of great importance, such as the post office, the public library, or the exhibition center, and where you can take advantage to immortalize your visit in the great letters of Chaves. Very close to this square, we find the fort of San Francisco, one of the two large forts that Chaves had for his defense. Within the walls of the fort, there is the Chapel of San Francisco, which hosted for 3 centuries until 1942, the tomb of Alfonso I, Duke of Braganza, although if you want to visit the place, you cannot do so, unless you are a guest of the hotel in which the fort has become. And at the Fort of San Francisco, we end our visit to Chaves, although before continuing our route, we make sure that next to the parking lot, there is the so-called Font del Pubo, where you can enjoy a glass of thermal waters, although you will have to let it cool a little, as the water runs at 78 degrees Celsius. On the way to the coast, we quickly visit Montalegre, a small village located in the natural park of Peneda Gerês, and where its medieval castle stands out. As for parking, you will have no problem, as you have a couple of free parking spaces, located very close to the historic center, and of which as always we leave you the location on Google Maps. At the accesses to Montalegre, in one of the roundabouts, we find a replica of the monastery of Pitos, located near the village, and where you can also visit a beautiful waterfall. Once the caravan is parked, we begin the visit to the banks of the River Cabada, which we cross through a small medieval stone bridge, starting a climb that in a short time takes us to the castle. This castle has its origins in the need of the Portuguese kings to arm the border with the Kingdom of Galicia. Its construction was started in the 13th century, with Alfonso III, and not completing until the 18th century. The castle can be visited for free, although we could not visit the Homenaje Tower, from which you are sure to have a beautiful view, as we arrived outside of opening hours. The Gothic-style Homenaje Tower dates back to the 14th century, and in the castle we find 3 other towers, the Peneda Tower, the Clock Tower, and the Small Tower, united by a large wall and a large inner courtyard equipped with a cistern. Although, as we said, we could not access the Homenaje Tower, the location of the castle at almost 1,000 meters of altitude allows us to enjoy a great panoramic view. Between the castle and the cemetery, there is the Church of Santa Maria, also called the Church of the Castle. Sheltered by large trees, which give the surroundings a peaceful character, this temple was for many years the main church of Montalegre. This small church has a Romanesque origin, but the current design corresponds to the 17th century, and calls attention that the bell tower is disconnected from the main body of the church. We descend from the castle, and next to the Church of Mercy, we find a Pelurino, which you will find in more places in Portugal, and that is a stone pillar in a well-visible place of the population, where the offenders were executed, being also a symbol of justice and royal, lordship, or municipal power, as the case may be. Through narrow streets, surrounded by stone houses, we reach the town square, where the city hall and the court are located, and where we also find a huge oak that is more than 300 years old. In this large square, we ended our visit, and we returned to the caravan, where MIA was waiting for us to continue our journey to the small village of Lindoso. Lindoso, which has about 500 inhabitants, belongs to the municipality of Ponte de Lima and is located on the banks of the river Limia, which makes the border between Spain and Portugal. As for parking, you will not have a problem, as you will have 2 free parking, which although not very spacious, are very well located to visit the monuments of this small village. We parked the caravan at the foot of the castle to begin the visit to Lindoso, small in size, but famous because in it we find concentrated in the same place, a large collection of so-called Espigueiros. In this community land, we find 64 of these Espigueiros, built in granite between the 18th and 20th centuries, typical both of northern Portugal and of Galicia in Spain, where they are called horreos, are born from the need to store in large silos the cereal. For this, it was necessary to build these elevated granaries, which served as a seed storage and dryer, to protect from the moisture and the animals that feed on cereals. The Espigueiros that have large ventilation windows sit on legs or stone pillars, with a remarkable circular loose on the top to prevent the entry of rodents, being many of them crowned by crosses, who would invoke the divine protection of their precious content against any damage or curse. Next to the Espigueiros, in the highest part of the land, we find the castle. This fortress, declared a national monument in 1910, is considered one of the most important defensive constructions in Portugal, being built in the 13th century, possibly under the reign of Alfonso III. This castle was the important base of the Portuguese incursions in Galicia, suffered also numerous attacks by the Spanish troops, falling into their hands on several occasions, but being always taken back by the Portuguese troops in a short time. Today, the fortress, abandoned in the 19th century, has been restored, and has a center of interpretation, and a large part of the towers and walls has also been reconstructed, being able to observe from them a beautiful panorama, both of the natural environment that surrounds Lindoso, as well as of the Espigueiros. And with the panorama of the Espigueiros, we end our visit to Lindoso just when it starts to rain, to head to Ponte de Lima, a city that, as you will see in the following video, we were unable to visit.